Okay, let's start by reading the problem description for find the index of the first occurrence in a string. Given two strings, needle and haystack, return the index of the first occurrence of needle and haystack, or -1 if needle is not part of haystack. Example 1, we have an input of haystack, sad but sad, needle is sad, so we have an output of 0 because sad occurs at the 0 index and 6 index, but the first occurrence is at 0. Example 2, we have an input of Leetcode and Leto. The output is -1 because Leto did not occur in Leetcode, so we've returned -1. For the constraints, we can see that the length of haystack and needle will be greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 10 to the 4th. Haystack and needle consist of only lowercase English letters. For our approach, we're going to utilize a pointer and a single for loop. This solution has a big O of n time complexity and constant space complexity. The general idea is we're going to loop through the haystack string in the for loop and track our position in the needle string with the pointer. Here we have a haystack string of Mississippi and a needle string of Issip. The characters I and M do not match, so our if condition triggers. Index minus pointer keeps our index at 0, and pointer gets assigned 0. Our for loop iterates, and index is now 1. The characters I and I match. Our first two conditions evaluate to false, and the pointer increments to 1. The characters S and S match. The first two conditions evaluate to false, and pointer increments to 2. The characters S and S match. The first two conditions evaluate to false, and pointer increments to 3. The characters I and I match. Our first two conditions evaluate to false, and the pointer increments to 4. The characters S and P do not match, so our if condition triggers. Our current index of 5 minus our current pointer of 4 gives us a new index of 1, and we reset the pointer back to 0. I want to stop here and point out that this if condition essentially rewinds the index back to where the possible match started, which is the index of 1. We reset the pointer to 0, and when the for loop naturally iterates, it gives us an index of 2. At this point, we know that the first I in Mississippi can't be the starting index, so it allows us to remove that possible match's starting index from the loop while keeping the remaining characters we already iterated over because they could still possibly be part of the needle. So now we have the characters I and S which do not match, so our if condition triggers. Our index minus pointer keeps the index at 2 and the pointer stays at 0. The for loop iterates and the index is at 3. I and S do not match. Index minus pointer keeps the index at 3. Pointer stays at 0. The for loop iterates and the index is at 4. The characters I and I match. Our first two conditions evaluate to false and the pointer increments to 1. The characters S and S match. The first two conditions evaluate to false and pointer increments to 2. The characters S and S match. The first two conditions evaluate to false and pointer increments to 3. The characters I and I match. Our first two conditions evaluate to false and the pointer increments to 4. The characters P and P match. Our first if condition evaluates to false, but our else if condition triggers because our pointer of 4 is equal to the needle length minus 1, which is also 4. So we return index minus pointer, which is 4. Let's translate this to code. Okay, we'll start by initializing a pointer with the value of 0. We'll set up our for loop. We'll initialize the index with the value of 0. We'll check that the index is less than the length of our haystack string, and then we will increment the index by 1 once the code block is finished executing. First thing we're going to do inside of our for loop is we're going to need to check if the character in the haystack doesn't match the character in the needle. And if it doesn't, we are going to assign our index minus our pointer, and then we are going to set the pointer to 0. Else if the pointer equals the needle length minus 1, we're going to return index minus pointer because that means we've found our needle. Else, we're going to increment the pointer because that means we have a match, but we don't have the entire needle accounted for yet. And then once we break out of our for loop, we are going to return -1 because that means we did not account for our needle. And that's our solution. Let's save it and run against the test cases. And we get the expected output. Let's copy and paste this into Leetcode. Okay, let's paste it in here. Hit submit. And we get an accepted solution. Thank you for watching.